Blockchains are becoming more and more popular, and having the necessary skills to create a user interface for them is, in my opinion, a must-know. Hey, how's it going everyone? My name is Norbert BM, and in today's video we're going to create a user interface for a made-up blockchain. The blockchain will be called Coin, and we're going to achieve this using, well, first of all, regular HTML and CSS and also JavaScript, but also a bit of help from Bootstrap, Font Awesome, and yeah, that's basically it. Now, this right here is actually a real project. This is included, the finished project, I mean, is included in my Git and GitHub course. And as you can see, it is also live on GitHub. Basically, if you visit this URL, everything is down in the description below, so you can just go ahead, scroll down and visit the link. And you can see this is live. You can also add to this blockchain. Basically, if you click on the add your block button, then this will lead you to my GitHub repository. Let me just make this a bit larger. And if you wish to add to this blockchain, then here's the explanation how you should proceed, and your block would be added to the chain. Again, this is a made-up chain. This is just for educational purposes only. But I think this is a really cool project, and if you wish to become part of this community, then please feel free to do so. Again, if you would add to this blockchain, then this number would turn into, well, the next number that is going to be passed in here. Your block will look like this. This is the Genesis block. This is my block. This is the block formed by Laura. You can visit. Actually, you will also see in the description how you can add yourself to this block, and by adding yourself to this block, you will add, if you wish, your name and your GitHub link. So basically, if I would click on this, I'm just going to open it up in a new panel. This will lead you to my GitHub page. Whee! All right, the GitHub, the Coin blockchain. Let's just go back to it. Will display a date that this was created, and will also display the hash, your hash, and the previous hash. And these are randomly generated numbers. We're going to create this using JavaScript. Also, it's a bit responsive, but I didn't do much to it. You can just hide and close the navigation. I'm going to add some different functionalities to this later on. And also, we're going to create this cool canvas. Whee! Okay, so I hope you're excited. If you are, please like this video. Also subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell. If you don't click the notification bell, you're not going to get notified when I'm posting new videos like this. Also, if you have any kind of questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. And with this being said, let's jump into the video. Okay, so I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. Let's hide you here. Now I have Visual Studio Code open. I created a folder. It's an empty folder. I'm going to start off by creating a index.html file. After that, a style.css, CSS, and we're actually going to create two things. We're going to create a UI.js. You can basically rename them if you wish. You can create a main.js and so far and so on. And I'm also going to create a G block. Yeah, let's just create a 001 and underscore G and underscore block, because this one will generate our second block, but it's going to generate the block that we're going to add, so JS. Also, this is a extension kind of video. The first video was a blockchain using JavaScript and Node.js, where we actually created a little blockchain using classes and added blocks to that blockchain. But everything happened in a background on the server side. So if you wish to check out that video, I'm going to leave a link in the description below. And that video generated this video because I wanted to create some kind of UI for it. Okay, so let's head back into our HTML and actually close everything up here so I'm not going to be confusing. And let's start off with a boilerplate. Within here, let's give it a name. Let's give it a Barney Coin. You can give it your own name. I'm going to use my middle name, Barney. Yes, please don't make fun of me. That's my middle name. Now up here, we're also going to add, right before our title, our link to our style.css and also the link for Bootstrap. So if you wish to add the link for Bootstrap, you're just going to go to getbootstrap.com. From here, you're going to click on get, and then you can just copy this link right here. Okay, we're going to add it. Let's add it before our link tag. That's not it. I did use one or two icons. Actually, I did use a couple of icons from Font Awesome. So going to use the CDM for font awesome. You're just going to go to, actually, I have everything down in the description below, so just follow the links, okay? So you're going to get this from Cloudflare, and we're going to get the URL, now the link tag. The link tag, we're going to paste this one in here. I think we're done. So we have our links linked up, not our links, we have our icons linked up, we have our Bootstrap linked up, we have our style.css linked up, and let's get started down here. So I'm going to create first of all a navigation bar, and this one, let's comment, also type in here comment navigation, and for this I'm going to use Bootstrap. So I'm going to use a couple of Bootstrap classes in order to just get a quick navigation bar started. So let's use nav tag. This is going to have a class. I'm also going to use a lot of Emmet here of navbar and navbar, then another class of navbar dash expanded, expand, and md. So basically going to expand after a middle size dimension, and then navbar dark, and then another dot, and the background I also want to be dark, and this is basically going to give you a dark background but a light color, so bg dark. Okay, now within our nav tag we're going to add first of all our container. So we're going to create a general div with a class of container, and I'm also going to create this a fluid container. Okay, within our container we're going to add our anchor tag, which is basically going to be this. Just show you. No, what have I done? It's going to be, which is going to be basically this right here. If we, it's basically just going to be the hash. It's going to lead you back. This link is going to lead you back to the main page, but you're not going to actually leave the main page, but it's good to have it in there. So anchor tag with the class of navbar and brand. And for the href, we're just going to use a hash. Basically, it's going to refresh the page. And within here, we're going to type in Barney coin. Okay, after that, I'm going to create a button, which is basically this button right here. It's going to hide and add the navigation bar. So let's create a button tag. So also give it a couple of classes. It's going to have the class of navbar toggle, navbar dash toggler. Sorry about that. Toggler is going to have the type of button. And now I need to add a couple of properties which are needed for Bootstrap, for Bootstrap to know what to do with this button. So I'm going to add a data, and I'm going to add here BS for Bootstrap and toggler. Toggle. I'm going to set this to collapse. I also have an excellent Bootstrap class, so please check that one out if you wish to learn more about Bootstrap. Okay, let's scroll down a bit. I'm just going to add another data property, data again from Bootstrap, and target. So this is basically in order for the JavaScript that we're going to add using Bootstrap. This is not the actual JavaScript. We're going to link up some JavaScript for Bootstrap. It's going to make this button functional and just show and hide on navigation. I'm going to use the ID of navbar navbar nav, and then the area control is going to control our navbar nav. We're also going to set the area expanded property to false. After you have our area expanded to false, we can now, let's actually open this up using live server. Right click, open using live server, and it should open right here. Okay, excellent. And this is, it's hidden because we don't have anything in our button. We now need to add something. So within our button tag, you're going to add now a span. This span is going to have span, and it's going to have the class of navbar dash toggle dash toggler and icon. Okay, this is going to give us the icon for, there we go. It's going to give us the icon. Now, because there's nothing in here, it's not going to show anything. And also we need JavaScript from Bootstrap. So let's go back to Bootstrap. And after the CSS link, if you scroll down, you will also have the link for JavaScript. Okay, so let's copy this one right here and add it right before our body. Actually, I'm going to type in here comment Bootstrap JS. Okay, now let's check out our button. Well, nothing happens because we don't have anything in there, but we're going to add a couple of things in there. So let's move on, and right after our button, I'm going to add navigation items, but these are going to be contained in a div which is going to have a collapsible class in order for it to know that this is actually the class that will be collapsed when I'm going to press that button. So let's go ahead, create a general div by using a dot and collapse for the class. then another class of navbar, navbar dash collapse, and that's not all. Up here we had an ID of navbar nav, and this is actually the ID that we're going to toggle. So by pressing this button, it's going to target this right here. So ID and navbar nav. Now within this container, we can now create our unordered list where we're going to insert our navigation items. So create an unordered list with the class of navbar nav, navbar dash nav. Within here, we're going to create a button for basically it's going to be this one right here for our home button. So let's go ahead and create that one button, and we're also going to give this the class because it's now in the list, so I want to use it as a nav item. Okay, and also going to give it the class of button and btn and dark. Okay, within here we're going to have a navigation. Within our button, we're going to create now a anchor tag with the class of navlink, and it's going to be the active one, navlink, and this one is going to be the one that is active. Just happened. There we go. Emmet didn't work there, and I'm going to refresh the page, and this is going to leave us home. Okay, so there's our button. Okay, now after our button tag, we're going to create a list item. It's going to have the class of nav item, because again, it's going to be part of the navigation. Also going to give this the class of btn, so it's basically going to be a button, and btn dark for the color. And also let's give it a shadow. So shadow class is just basically going to give it a generic shadow, though, if I can type shadow correctly. And let's give this a margin to the start of 2 rem. Basically is going to have 2 rem from the left. Okay, this is now going to include a anchor tag because we want to have it as a link. We're going to have the class of navlink. You have to pass in the class, so class navlink, and this will then include a icon tag with the class of, and it's going to use now bootstrap classes. So bi again, and we're going to have here gear, and then a margin to the end of 2, because I want to have between the icon tag and the actual meaning of the button a bit of a margin. So let's hit enter. Let's see if I typed in everything correctly. Bam, 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 bam. And right here, I'm also going to, hey, I forgot to include bootstrap icons. Don't worry, we're going to get back to that. Or actually, if I have, I'm going to show you also bootstrap icons. No problem about that. And right after our icon tag, but before the anchor tag, we're going to type in here settings. So settings. Okay. So there's our settings button. And it's grayed out because the other one has the class of active and this one does not have the class of active. But it's also has just a bit of a shadow. So let's go back to Bootstrap, and if you scroll up, click on Bootstrap, so the tag itself, then go to navigation. Right here, if you click on icons, it's going to lead you to another page, and this is going to give you a different CDN. So you have to scroll completely down to the bottom, and boom, boom, boom. There's a CDN. There's a CDN. So just click on this, copy to the clipboard, then go up here and paste it in. It doesn't matter where you paste it in. So now we should have our, yay, there we go. Now I'm going to close these tabs of Bootstrap and also font awesome CDN, but font awesome I'm going to leave open. And as I said, everything is down in the description below, so don't worry about this. So we have a settings button, we have a home button. Are we missing something? Yes, we are. We are missing our transaction button. So also create that one. Let's actually check if this is already working. Let's click on this. Yay! There we go. Okay, so you can see this is now working. Now, if you're wondering why the background is dark, well, because I made the boo-boo. And this should be, if you go up to the nav class, navbar expanded, navbar dark, and bg dark, you can just turn this into danger. Danger. Hit save, and there we go. Now it's red, exactly as we have it here. Actually, I should zoom in a bit. There we go. Okay, so let's close this one up. Now let's go down here and just add our last navigation item. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it down here. I'm going to just change the icon, which is going to be bi wallet and 2. Hit enter. This is going to change the icon, and we're just going to change the title here to transactions. Transaction. Okay, so this is completed. So we're done now with our navigation. Now, what I like to do is when I'm done with something, I'm just going to close up the tag so not disturbing me. Also, you could close up the head and you see how beautiful and simple this looks. Now, next up comes the container that is going to contain everything that is in here. So the title, the button, the subtitle here, and also our blocks. So let me close this one up, go back to here, and let's get started with our container. So right after our navigation, we're going to create a class of container. This is not a Bootstrap class, just going to give a bit of a margin padding and so on and so on. Within here, we're going to create an h1. It's going to be our title with a class of display1, which is going to give us a greater display. Then I'm also going to use a h1 class and a margin from the top of 5 rem. And within here, I'm going to create, I'm just going to type in blocks, not block, blocks on chain and column. There we go, there's our blocks on chain. And right after our column, we're going to create a span tag. It's going to have a ID of number blocks. We're going to use this ID later on and just going to pass in 1 for now. Now the idea here is that this is going to constantly look for the blocks, and as soon as it's going to see another block, then it's going to change this to the number of blocks, so the sum of blocks basically. After that, I'm going to create an anchor tag, and basically I'm just going to paste in here for the href the GitHub address for there we go, the GitHub address for this blockchain. So if you're going to visit this, then going to lead you here. And you can fork it and add. You actually don't even have to fork it. Oh yes, you do. You need to fork it and then make a pull request, and it's basically pretty simple. It will be added to the blockchain. It's everything down here. You just have to add one line of code. Okay, you have to add this function, then your number, your username, and your GitHub address if you wished so, and then add this right here to the HTML file. Then make the pull request, and I'm going to accept it, and you'll be part of this blockchain. So let's go back to our anchor tag. So basically within our anchor tag, I'm also going to create a button tag. This is going to have the class of btn and the class of btn-danger. And for the text, we're just going to have here, add your block with capital I. Okay, and there we go. There's a button. We should also create a shadow for it. Yay, let's also add a class of shadow. I like shadows. It makes things pop, doesn't it? Okay, just a bit of a shadow. After our anchor tags, we're going to go down here, going to create a paragraph tag, and it's just going to have an explanation. Basically, if you click on the name within the block, it should, and let me give it a margin from the top. So class margin top of 2. Okay. Basically, as I showed you in our finished project, if you click the name, this name right here, it will send you to the user that added the block. So going to have some kind of social proof. Also, people can then visit your GitHub account and visit your projects if you have them public, of course. Now, next up, we're going to create the blockchain. For this, we're going to remain within our container. So everything is happening in the container. Do not leave the container, okay? This div right here. Within here, I'm going to create a blockchain tag. It's not a tag that actually exists, but I'm going to create one. So blockchain, and this is actually going to be a tag. So this is the opening tag and then the closing tag. What? No, that's what I want. Now for this tag, I'm going to use a couple of Bootstrap classes. So let's add here class, going to display as flex. Then I'm going to align the items to the center, dash items and dash center. And after that, we can add our very first block. So let's create here comment block 1, but actually this block is the Genesis block. So let's actually call it this way. It's going to be block Genesis. Okay, for the block, again, I'm going to create a tag, block tag, open and close. What am I doing? Open and close tag for block. Now, the blocks themselves are going to have a couple of classes, and the first class I want to add is a card class. Now, cards will actually give me just a bit of a, not just a bit, but actually more styling for what you see actually here. It's going to give me a basic height and width and border radiuses and so on and so on. So I'm going to use here class of card, and then a class of block, and then a class of active. I'm going to explain why. What are you here? Don't need you. Tiv, and this class of active, we're going to take this in JavaScript and make something of it. And what we're going to do is when I click on one of these blocks, you can see it's going to add a border and a shadow and so forth and so on. Then within the block, we're going to add a header. This one here is the header. Let's also go to our, add here a div with a class of card header. And within this class of card header, we're going to have a span, which is then going to have the class of display 4 and the title of block 1. After our span right here, I'm going to move in to our div again and going to give it I'm going to insert a paragraph tag with the class of text muted. And now I'm going to insert here the name of the block, which is going to be the Genesis block. Okay, so there we are. After our div with the class of card header, I'm going to move down here. I'm going to create an unordered list. This is going to have the class of list group and list group and flush. Hit enter. And the unordered list is basically going to contain all of the information that is here. And I'm using list group in order to have this borders down there. Okay, so let's go back to our project and let's start out with the very first item that we're going to have in our list. This is going to have a class of list group item, and within here we're going to have a h5 with the title of hash. Basically this is going to contain the hash. Let's create here a span tag with the class of hash. You don't want to style this later on. And for the hash, just going to insert some kind of gibber number. Okay, this right here. It's not actually hash, but I want to have something in there. After our span tag, we're going to create another h5. It's going to have the title of hash of previous block, and then it's another span tag with again the class of text muted, and we're going to type in here 0. Because the Genesis block doesn't have any kind of previous hash, I also explained this in my previous video where I actually explained everything about a blockchain and the blocks in that chain. Okay, the next item, so let's create our next list item, the class of list dash group and dash item. Within here, we're going to have a h6 with the title of timestamp. Let me spell timestamp. There we go. And within here, we're going to create a span tag with a class of text muted again. And we're just going to type in some kind of time. Doesn't matter because we are going to take care of this in our next block using JavaScript. Okay, now right after this item, we're going to leave the UL and leave the block. And we're going to add another element that we need to create, which is going to be a chain link. What are you doing, Emmett? It's going to be a chain link tag. Okay, and this is basically going to contain this chain icon right here. Nothing special about it. So icon tag, and I'm actually going to use here a Bootstrap class. So icon tag FAS and then FA-link, and this is going to give us the link right here. Okay, and I'm going to position this using CSS later on. Okay, the last thing I need here is the footer, but I'm basically just going to copy and paste this in. This one is going to be outside of the block and outside of the container. I'm going to paste it right in here. It's going to be the footer, which would, if you open this one up, it will lead you to my website. Yay! Which is, why aren't you loading? Norbert BM. You can find here all of my tutorials, all of my courses. Bye-bye. You're gone. So let's move on. This is everything that we need for the UI. Okay, so basically, if you start the page, you would see this. Now, let's style this a bit. I'm going to now open up our style.css, close this one up, and there's not much CSS in here. We're going to first of all take care of our blockchain. So blockchain, basically of our tag, and I'm going to give this a max height, a max width. Let's start with the max height of 700 pixels, and then a max width of 900 pixels. I'm not going to be wider than 900 pixels. Okay, in order to have this right here, I'm going to now change the scroll behavior, or actually the overflow behavior. I'm going to set this to scroll, and then the overflow only on the y-axis, I'm going to set to hidden. After we do this, let's go back to our thing right here. I'm going to also give it a padding, all around padding of 2 rem. Now, we can't see anything because we need items within here. Actually, after I push in our very first, and if I type this also correctly, blockchain, you can see now the bar down here, but if I push in another item, then this is going to, well, it's going to make this one scrollable. Okay, so next up, let's take care of the chain link tag. And I'm not targeting the icon, I'm targeting the tag itself, because first I want to increase the font size by 1.5 rem. Then I'm going to give it a margin of 0.8 rem, all around margin, and a color of gray. Okay, now for our blocks. So we had a class of block, and we're going to take care of this cursor. On the cursor, when I hover over that block to be pointer. Although I'm not using a hover effect, but still, when I'm in this block, I want to have the cursor as pointer. Then I'm going to change the color to red. Okay, so it's going to change the title color, and I'm going to give this a min width this time. It's not going to be smaller than 300 pixels. Now for the anchor tag within it, so block and the anchor tag, I'm going to change the text decoration to none. Now let's target the header. So within the class of block, I'm going to target the class of card header, and I'm just going to change the background color of this. So background color, I'm going to set it to a hash of 333. See, so I didn't want to use here. Could have used here a block. Where are you? Card header. Could have used here a class of BG dark, and this would have gave me a dark color, but I don't like this. You can also see it's overwriting our CSS class. I just wanted to add a light dark color. So I'm using the hash of 333. Okay, the last thing that I want to do, actually I'm going to copy this and replace this with the H5. And I'm going to increase the margin from the top. So let me delete this, so margin. Actually, you know what? I could have done this. Yeah, this is actually going to target all of the H5s. This is why I'm doing this. So margin and top of 5 rem. Okay, not 5 rem. What am I doing? 1 rem. Sorry about that. Now we only have 2 more things to do, and that is when a class of block has a class of active, then actually the first block has the class of active, then we're going to change the border color to 1 pixel and also add a border, 1 pixel solid, and let's say blue. You can add another color if you wish. Okay, so this block is active and its border color will be blue, signifying that this is active. And also is going to have a box shadow. So box shadow, and I'm going to add a shadow of 0, 0, and 15 pixels for the spread, and also let's add a 0.5 pixel for the blur. And I'm going to add a really grayish color, so hash CCC. Okay, there we go. We have a bit of a box shadow. The last thing that I want to do is the hash. I'm going to transform the hash color. So the block class, within the block class, the class of hash is going to have a sorry about that, color of red is going to be displayed as block. And I'm doing this because this right here is going to actually be then far longer. You'll see. You can see here it has these dots at the end, and you can do this. It's a pretty cool trick by first of all displaying it as block, then taking out the white space. There is a white space property, and set it to have a no wrap. Okay, you can see that the block and actually the paragraph tag, the hash, is now leaving our block, but it's still displayed as block. Okay, now we can change its overflow. I'm going to set it as hidden, so we're not going to see the end of the block, though it's overflowing, but you can see it's cutting up there. And the last thing that you need to do is set the text overflow now as ellipsis. Okay, and instead of cutting it down, it's going to add 3 dots, 3 ellipses. Okay, pretty cool trick. So we are done with our HTML, we're done with our CSS. We can now move on to JavaScript. And within JavaScript, we're first of all going to take care of our UI. So the next thing we're going to do here, sorry about that. So when I'm targeting a block and clicking on it, I'm changing the active class. Woo, that's not what I want to do. Now we can easily do this using JavaScript. I'm basically going to grab onto our block first of all. So I'm going to grab onto all of the blocks. So let's create a cons called blocks. Let's also do a document.query selector. You know what? What am I doing this right now? Because I need more than one block. So we need to add the block first. So put a pin in this. Let's just say, let's finish this right here. Query selector, and let's select all of the block classes. So block, okay? We can check this out, console log and blocks. And now if I would open up the console, go back to our project actually, and inspect and go to, hey, why are you up here? I want you to be down there, console, and let's hit save. And I didn't link up my UI. Hey, let's go down to our footer, not to our footer, but to the end. And let's insert here JS UI, and let's say script source and UI.js. Okay, and now I should see, yep, I'm getting a node list with all of the blocks. Cool, which is basically just one. So let's add another block. Now, you know what? Let's finish this. It's actually not a lot of code, but I can't show it to you, or could show it to you if I just hardcode another block in there. But believe me, the functionality will be there. So let's grab onto the variable of blocks. We're going to grab onto all of the blocks. Because we have now multiple blocks, we could use a forEach loop on them. Now within this forEach loop, I'm going to grab onto the blocks. I'm going to open up another parenthesis. And I'm going to use, so call by function. I'm going to use an arrow function. Within here, we're going to pass in a block. And for each block, I'm going to use a onClick event. So onClick is basically the same thing, almost the same thing as doing onClick, just basically the same thing as doing a event listen of click. And this is again going to use the arrow function. And when I'm clicking on a specific block, I want to go into the document, grab onto all of the blocks again. So query selector and grab onto all of the blocks again, all the classes of block. And again, I'm going to loop over them. And we're going to, for each of the blocks, again, I'm going to call upon a block, and I'm going to use here arrow function again. So you should be in a parenthesis. I'm going to grab onto the block. And first of all, so the very first time I'm going to click on a block, I'm going to remove block class list, and I'm going to remove from it the class of active. Okay. First of all, this should already work. If I check out inspect and go on the element itself, so I'm going to select the element, which is blockchain. Wait a second. So blockchain, and within here, I'm trying to grab onto the block. So block, you can see it has the class of active. Okay. Now if I click on it, it no longer has the class of active. So down here, it's gone. If I refresh this, it's going to get back its class of active. But again, if I would click on the block, damn it, it's gone. So let me select this again. Boom, blockchain, and within the blockchain, I want to select the block. Let me select the block. There we go. And I'll remove the class of active. So now that we have removed the class of active and it's actually removing from all of the blocks, but I want to add back this class of active to whatever I'm clicking on. So we're going to go right after, so we did this, go right after curly braces and then the next parenthesis, and within here I'm going to say that I need another action which is going to take the block and class list dot class list, and I'm going to add back the active class. Okay, so basically now if I click on it, it's going to stay the same because it's removing and adding it back. But you will see if we create another block, then it's going to remove and add it to that block. And what do something went wrong here, so and I also need here to pack this into curly braces. Wait a second, not that one, but this one. Okay, there we go. So basically when I'm clicking on it, it's removing and adding the class back. Now another functionality that I'm going to add into the UI is going to be that we're going to watch for this number right here. But this I'm actually going to do a bit later on. So now let's go ahead and move into our block, and let's create a functionality that's going to add another block to the chain. So let's open up the JavaScript file for this, the 001g block. And let's create here a variable called let blockchain. I'm going to assign to this variable the blockchain itself. So document, query selector, and I'm going to grab on to the blockchain tag. Okay, let's maybe also console log this, console log blockchain. Let's hit save. Let's check out the console. And again, we need to hook this up So I'm going to go down here. This is going to be blockchain and blocks. So let's link up here script source. I'm going to link up our 001 g and block.js file. Okay, and there we go. We're console logging the blockchain tag. Okay, I'm going to delete this. Now I'm going to initiate two variables up here. First one is going to be let block ID and then let name, because we're going to need these two in order to push into our blockchain a couple of variables. So we're going to create the blockchain functionality, which is going to create a block. This is going to await for a couple of variables, for example, the block ID, then the name. I'm going to set this one just as a default, okay? I'm going to set this one as Norbert BM, so there is something in there. And the next variable that I'm going to set in here is going to be href, which I'm going to set as my GitHub link. But obviously you will change this later on. Okay, so just to have some kind of information in there. Now we got our functionality. Now let's add something to it. So I'm going to create a variable with the let keyword. Let's call this new chain. This new chain is actually going to create a new chain link here. Okay, so let's grab onto this and let's say that within here I'm going to create an icon tag. And sorry about that, we need backticks. And within here we're going to use a class for the icon tag exactly as we did in our HTML with FAS and FA and dash link. Okay, let's hit save and we just created our link tag. Now I want to grab on from the DOM to this right here. So we have in our DOM a link, actually pull this down, a link tag. And now when I'm creating a new block, I actually want to insert also this link tag. So what I can do, I can actually create this link tag again using JavaScript. So I'm going to create here a new variable called chain. I'm going to use document and this time create element. And I'm going to create the element that is exactly as we called it last time, going to be called chain link. Now to this chain link, I'm going to grab onto the variable, going to use the inner HTML property on it and going to add the new chain. So basically this one right here. Okay, now it's time to create a new block. So that we can actually type in here comment, create new chain link, and then copy and paste this in here, create new block. Okay, again, I'm going to create a variable called new block. And we know if we take a look in our HTML back in here, that a block basically consists of a block tag, which has a couple of classes, and then the header and the unordered list and so on and so on. So let's go back to our JavaScript file. And actually I'm just going to add here, just going to initiate this new block. Let's just leave it there. Now I'm going to create a new block, which first of all, we need to create that element. So document, again, create element. And we're going to create a new block element. So block. And to this block element, we can now add classes. So block, class name, and we can now assign multiple, name. Now we can assign multiple classes by just leaving spaces between the classes, so card and block. Okay. And now we can grab onto this block and add to its inner HTML the new block we are going to create up here. So let's go ahead and go back to our element, to our variable of new block. Within here, I'm going to create a completely new block just by using HTML. So let's start up by creating our header class. So class of header, we actually need a div with the class of header and so on and so on. But I don't want to actually create this. I'm going to copy and paste it from our initial HTML. So from this div down here, you could just close up and copy everything that is in the blockchain. So actually in the block. So let's go back to our JavaScript file. I'm going to insert here, but be very careful. You actually need to use here backticks, so temporary literals. So I'm going to assign let new block to a couple of backticks, temporary literals. I'm going to paste this in here. Let me just arrange this a bit. You should be there, you should be there, and this is looking good. Okay, so we know that the block, the very first block had the number 1 for its ID, and I'm going to use here a variable. Because when in the template string, we can now use interpolation. We're going to use here a block ID that we created up here, remember? this functionality, as soon as we're going to pass into this function a number, it's going to go down here and be passed in here. Now we also have here the href. Where do we have it? Wait just a second. The span going to now have the anchor. Hey, didn't create the anchor tag. So instead of Genesis block, I'm going to delete the Genesis block. Actually, from the paragraph tag, I'm going to delete the class of muted. And then within here, I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to create an href, actually an anchor tag with an href. Anchor tag, I'm going to have a href, and I'm going to assign this, well, to the href that is going to be passed in here into the function. I'm going to use the href variable or the href argument. Okay, so whatever we pass in here as a reference is going to be passed into the blockchain. Then I also want this to be opened in another page, so we can use the target property, target, and we're going to assign this to a blank target. Basically, it's going to open it up in another page. Now, still not done. I also want to give this a class. So after blank, we're going to give it the class of text muted. Actually, text info. Sorry about that. So text info, which is basically just going to give me, if we take a look in our finished project, this bluish class or this bluish line. Okay, and now right after, right in our anchor tag, we can now use our name. So within parentheses, I'm now going to use the name variable. What am I doing? Okay, within here, I'm going to use the name variable. So user from up here going to be passed in here. Okay, so that's almost it. We now need two more things. We need our hash. So we need to generate some kind of hash. So I'm going to delete this hash and pass in here a actual function. So again, interpolation, I'm going to pass in here the generate hash, and this is going to be a function. It's going to be executed here. We still need to create this hash. So let's go ahead and create a hash, but also let's pass in here the previous hash. So where we had our 0, we're going to pass in here, not this one. We're going to pass in here our get previous hash. So I'm going to delete this and pass in get prev hash. Okay, so we need here two functions. Now down here, when we have our timestamp, we are going to pass in here, delete this, another function which is going to be called block timestamp. Okay, and this is also going to be a function, so open and close parentheses. And when a block is going to be created, it's going to have a timestamp. So basically, after we have our new block and we create our block element, and it's going to have a class of card and block, and the new block will be assigned to this element, we now need to assign this element to the blockchain. So we head up here our variable of blockchain. We're going to grab onto this, paste it in here in our function, and we're going to append to it the block. Okay, and after we appended the block, so you can see here's a block and then comes a chain. So we can just copy and paste this, and then we're going to also append a chain, basically this chain element that we created up here. So this element was created by using create element and was assigned a anchor tag. Okay, and that's basically it for the create block functionality. Okay, now all we have to do is create the functionality for generating a hash. So let's go outside our function and let's say function. Basically, we could use this function right now. So if I go up here and use my function, and because I already have something assigned for the name variable and something assigned for the href, I'm just going to pass in here the number 2, because this would be our second block. Hit save, and generate hash is not defined. Okay, because it's looking for the function. So let me quickly just create this function. Just initiate the functions down here. So function of generate hash, I'm going to console log null. I'm going to do the same thing for get previous hash. Just going to copy this, and also for block timestamp. Okay, and boom, we have a block. Okay, so just inserted a new block. It has a number 2. It has my name, which I inserted right here, and it has the href. If I would click and open, and it's going to send me to my GitHub account. Okay, Now let's take care of the hash, and then for the previous hash, and then the timestamp. So let's go into the generate hash function. I'm not going to use the SHA256 hash generator as we did in our previous video for the blockchain, which is actually grabbing onto the API and generating a hash and so forth and so on. We're going to use just a random number generator. It's much simpler. So let's go in here. I'm going to comment this one out, and let's create a let result. I'm going to assign this to an empty string. And first of all, I'm going to create a couple of characters. Basically create a variable const with characters. Within here, I'm going to insert all of the existing characters from the alphabet and numbers, lower and uppercase, of course. I'm just going to copy this in, paste it in right here. And now for the character length. The SHA256 stands for 256 characters. So if you want to create something like that, then we basically go in here, create another const, and we first of all going to assign the character length, characters and length. So we're going to grab onto the characters, then dot length, so actually giving them a property. And we're going to use now a for loop, and within here we're going to start with I equal to 0. It's going to start from 0. Then we're going to tell that as long as I is less than 256, which is basically not going to give it equal to 256, it's just going to be less than 256. And then we're going to start iterating I. Okay, so let's do this by telling that the result, not return, result, we're going to start to add to it the characters dot chart. I'm going to use chart art here, which is going to return a characters at a specific index. Then use the math method on it, and from the math method, they're also going to use floor. So dot floor, and then the math method again. And from here, we're going to use the random on it. Okay, and this is going to then be multiplied with the character's length that we just created up here. So basically, this function will at the end return the result. Okay, and we can always see it just generated a random hash number for us. If I would down here console log, first of all, the result, you will see it has a long character line. Okay, right down here, 256 characters or less than 256. Boom. Okay, but we're not displaying everything in here because we used our CSS magic to cut this up and insert a couple of ellipses. Okay, now let's see how we can get the previous hash. So I'm going to comment this one out. Now we're going to start off by creating a variable called blocks. And we're going to assign this to the blockchain. So from our blockchain up there, we're going to grab onto the children. And now we're going to loop over them. So for, let's say, let I equal to 0. And again, as long as I is less, so semicolon, as long as I is less than the blocks dot length, then we're going to interpolate I, start adding to I. Okay, so let's do this. So let blocks hash, block hash is equal to block. I'm going to now get from our blocks and then return blocks hash dot children. We're going to return the very first one, and then again we're just going to move up and down the DOM. Actually going to move down the DOM now. So children again, we're going to select the last was the very first one, and then children again. From this we're going to select the second one. And from this, the inner text, and there we go. It should now give us exactly this hash right here. Okay, so the previous hash is this hash. Now the last thing that we need to do is the timestamp. So let's comment this part out. And for the timestamp is basically a time functionality. You most certainly often see this. Let's create a const with the current date, and we're going to assign this to the new date object. And now we just need to get month, date, and full year, and we then need to add them together. So let's start up with const current day of month. I'm going to set the current date from we're going to take from the new date object the get date. It's basically going to give us the month. Then const, let's get our current month. Again, from the current date variable, we're going to get month. Now we need a year, so const current and year. And we're going to assign, or actually grab on from our variable current date to the get full year. Okay, now let's return a date string And you know what? I'm going to use backticks here, so it's going to be much faster by just using interpolation. We need our current day of month. I'm going to use here a minus sign and then the current month. I'm going to add +1 to it because this starts basically with 0. And then again a minus sign, and we're going to add to this now the current year. Okay, and this already gives us a timestamp. Boom, there we go. 1st of January 2022 is when the next block was added. Okay, now what we need to do, let me close this actually up, is well, check out our functionality, because when we click on it, it's not changing the active class. So let's see why this is the case. Let me just add here console log of click. Okay, let's right click, inspect console log, clicking on you, and there's nothing happening. So we added the new block. Hey, don't want to go there. Let's take out this console log. Let's also take out all of our console logs. I don't need them right now. Console the result. Just need this click, and it's not working. Why aren't you working? Block UI. So you're linked up. The on-click event. Okay, so let's try this. Oh yeah, because it's the order. I should have put this before the UI. Okay, now it's working. Okay, so now if I'm clicking on a different block, it's going to change the active class. Okay, so the last thing that we want to do, let me check my notes just very quickly. Oh yeah, is set, well, the number of blocks, because we have only 2 blocks in here, 1 block in here, but we can see we actually have 2 blocks. So let's take care of this. I'm going to create a set timeout function, and this is going to look for, is going to have a function. So let's create a const of number of blocks. Okay, I'm going to grab one from the document, query select, I'm going to grab onto the ID of number of blocks. So ID hash and air blocks. So we created this ID right up where we created after a title, right here, number of blocks ID. Okay, so we're going to grab onto this and going to grab onto this inner HTML, actually this inner text, inner and text, and going to reassign this inner text to the blocks, and from the blocks we're just going to take the length, because now it's going to look for the blocks and voila, it's going to check for the length. You could also add a delay here just for a effect. After the curly brackets, I'm going to set 1000 milliseconds, which is basically 1 second. So if I refresh here, it's going to start up with 1, and then after 1 second it's going to recalculate it and see that, hey, actually there's 2 blocks. If I would add another block, then this would make it a 3rd block. Now how to add another block, I have it down here in the description, so just please check it out. Add your block if you wish. And yeah, I think we're done with our project. We are done. Why isn't this opening in blank? Why? Wait just a second. Navigation, the button, the class, and a, yes, this is targeting this, but I forget to add here a target, and the target should be blank. Okay, so let's try this again. Boom, it's opening up a new page. Okay, so this one is done. Again, the entire code is down in the description below. So please go ahead and copy and paste it. If you mess something up, then you can verify it. So hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a like. Leave me a couple of comments if you wish to know something about the code, if you wish to add something to it. Also, check out the GitHub repository and add to this chain. It's pretty awesome. Also, if you wish, check out the Bootstrap course that I have, and check out the new Git and GitHub course that I have. So with this being said, wish everyone a lovely day and see you next time. Bye bye.